Hello everyone, welcome back to Universal Group of Institutions. I am Lavanya. In the last video, we were discussing the NCERT Grade 7 6th chapter, which is Respiration in Organisms. And in this video, we'll move forward with the further concept of the same topic. So till now, we covered what is cellular respiration. So what is cellular respiration? Cellular respiration where oxygen travels into the cells and which helps to break down the food to release more number of energy. And then this cellular respiration is divided into two types. One is aerobic respiration and another one is the anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration where glucose with the help of oxygen breaks down and give rise to the carbon dioxide, water and more number of energy is released. And then in anaerobic respiration what happens? The food break down in the absence or in the less amount of oxygen and give rise to the alcohol and the carbon dioxide and even energy. And then we also came across the how humans respire. So and we also spoke about the respiratory system of humans where we have three major parts. One is nasal cavity or nose where the air enters, and then we have windpipe is a tract where the air passes and reaches the lungs, and the third one is lungs which is located in the chest cavity and help in the exchange of gases. And then we also came across the mechanism of breathing, which is inhalation and the exhalation. So now we'll move forward with the respiration in other organisms. So we'll first start with the insects, which is cockroach. So cockroach do not use lungs. They don't have lungs, they do not use lungs, and they breathe through tiny openings on the sides of their body called spiracles. So they have a tiny spores which is present in the outside sides of their body and helps in the respiration. So air enters through these spiracles and travel inside a network called trachea. So they travel inside the air tubes which is known as trachea and directly reach the cells. So these tubes reach every cell directly, and where oxygen diffuses into the cells and carbon dioxide diffuses out through the same tubes. So what happens here? Insects breathe through the spiracles where tiny holes on the sides of the body, where inside a network of tracheal tubes which is also known as trachea or air tubes delivers air directly to the body tissues without the need of the lungs. And there is no blood involved in carrying the gases, and gas exchange is direct, making it very efficient. So this is about the cockroaches or insects. Next we'll move on to the earthworms. So earthworm have a special respiratory system or a mechanism. It is known as cutaneous respiration. So what do you mean by cutaneous respiration? Here they breathe through their moist skin. The respiration through the skin is known as cutaneous respiration. So the gases passes directly through their slimy surface into the bloodstream. So this is why worms cannot survive on dry land and they need moisture. So what happens here? Earthworms also do not have the lungs. They respire or breathe through the moist and slimy skin. So their entire skin is thin, moist and slimy. So what happens? Oxygen from the air diffuses into its moisture and diffuses into the blood vessels under the skin. And later carbon dioxide diffuses out the same way. So the condition over here is that skin must remain moist for gases exchanges, and this is why worms die or burrow deeper under the during dry conditions. And overwatering soil can also suffocate them by blocking air spaces. So now earthworms undergo a special respiration process which is known as cutaneous respiration. And next we'll move into the frogs. So frogs are amphibians. What do you mean by amphibians? Amphibians means the organisms which can survive on land and which can survive on water, both. So since frog being an land and water animal, they have lungs like humans and they can also respire through moist skin, especially when they are underwater during hibernation. Okay, so we can also say that frog has three major distinct type of respiration. One is cutaneous respiration where they can respire through the skin, and one is pulmonary respiration where they can respire through the lungs, and the third one is buccopharyngeal respiration where they can respire through their mouth lining also. So what happens? Having lungs like humans but can also respire through the moist and the slippery skin. So how do they respire? When the frog is on land, they respire through lungs. When the frog is in water during hibernation, they respire through moist skin, and they can also respire through lining of the mouth cavity. So how do they breathe on land? Frog use lungs similar to the humans, but their lungs are less developed compared to the humans. So they breathe by buccal pumping, movement of the mouth cavity to push air into the lungs. And how do they respire in water? So frog use their moist skin. As I said, the respiration through skin is known as cutaneous respiration, where oxygen diffuses directly through the skin into the blood. So frogs are amphibians, so they use dual mode of respiration over here. So what about the aquatic life which is in water? So how do they respire? If we talk about fishes, fishes cannot breathe atmospheric air. So they extract dissolved oxygen from water using a specialized organ called gills. So these specialized organ rich in blood vessels. So as water flows over the gills, oxygen enter the blood and carbon dioxide exist. So how do fishes breathe? Fish live in a water where oxygen is dissolved, which is not in a gaseous form. So what fishes do? They take in water through the mouth and pushes the water over their gills. So gills have tiny filaments and rich in blood vessels, making gas exchange easily. So in this process, oxygen dissolved in the water diffuses into the blood in gills, and carbon dioxide diffuses out into the water. So fish cannot use atmospheric oxygen, one thing majorly, and they extract only dissolved oxygen from the water. So this is about the fishes. What about the marine animals? Whales and dolphins, do they have gills? No. They are mammals with lungs just like us. So that's why they must surface regularly to breathe air. So the famous water spot you see is not water from the lungs. It's water from the blowhole, air being forced out. So whales and dolphins have lungs, not the gills. They must come out to the water surface regularly to breathe in air and often release a fountain of water from the blowhole. So if we look into the respiration in organisms, where cockroach have spiracles and trachea, where air directly flow and there is no lungs and there is no blood involvement during respiration. And if we look into the earthworm uses cutaneous respiration, where moist skin is used and needs moisture and air diffuses through the skin. And if we look into the frog have cutaneous respiration, pulmonary respiration and buccopharyngeal respiration, all the three, because it's a water and land animal which uses dual breathing, where it uses both skin and lungs for the respiration. And if we look into the fish uses gills and it is a branchial mode of respiration which uses dissolved oxygen from the water. So this is all about respiration in animals. Now we'll look into the respiration in plants. Do plants also respire? Yes, plants also respire. In leaves, gas exchange happens through tiny spores called stomata, and they take in oxygen and release carbon dioxide. So what is respiration? So respiration in plants is a process by which plants break down glucose during photosynthesis to release energy using oxygen and release carbon dioxide. Although plants make their own food, they also respire just like animals. So why do plants need to respire? They need energy for growth, for example cell division, transportation of water and minerals, opening and closing of stomata, and repair of damaged cells or tissues, and even to absorb the nutrients. So this energy comes from cellular respiration, not from the photosynthesis. So plants respire through three main parts. One is through their stomata, where leaves have tiny spores called stomata on their surface. Each stomata is surrounded by guard cells that open and close. Through stomata, the leaves takes in oxygen and releases carbon dioxide. Where oxygen enters leaves through the stomata, it diffuses into internal leaf cells, and carbon dioxide exists through the stomata only. So glucose in the presence of oxygen give rise to energy, carbon dioxide and water. So stomatas are mainly on the underside of leaves to reduce water loss. Okay, so where do stomatas are present, they are present underside of the leaves to reduce the water loss. Secondly, respiration through stems. Young stems have pores like lenticles. So these lenticles allow exchange of gases with the atmospheric air. And in the woody plants, which is known as trees, the bark has lenticles for slow but continuous air exchange. So lenticles are also responsible for the fragrance in apples and potatoes. So lenticles in the stem helps in the gas exchange in the plants. And third, if we look into the respiration through the roots. Roots respire by taking in oxygen from air spaces present between soil particles. So this oxygen diffuses into air root cells, and if soil is waterlogged, oxygen cannot reach the roots, which is known as root suffocate. Okay, so overwatering kills the household plants due to lack of oxygen, not excess of the water, because there is a water blockage which is stopping the oxygen to reach the roots over here. So in respiration in plants, leaves also helps in exchange of gases, roots also helps in exchange of gases, and stem also helps in exchange of gases. So all plant body parts. So each part independently takes in oxygen and release carbon dioxide, where plants break down glucose in cell just like other organisms. So respiration occurs all the time, even in daytime and even in the night. So it uses oxygen and releases the carbon dioxide, and also release energy from glucose, and it happens in the mitochondria. That is why we call mitochondria is a powerhouse of the cell. So photosynthesis and respiration are opposite process, but they both occur simultaneously in the plant. Okay, and that completes our two-part series of respiration in organisms. So if you find this video informative, don't forget to like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you.